Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. We start the video with a story in which a customer first hurt himself in the store and then had the audacity to threaten our OP that he would sue them. Well, let's see what happened in the end. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Here we go. Customer threatens to sue me. Quick backstory. So when I was just out of high school, I worked in a small liquor store in a high-risk area. Other than the pay, the job was pretty good and the manager loved me, took my side in basically anything because I was usually right, and he had a policy that if customers are being a problem, boot them. So it's a cold winter's night. We're about to lock up. I'm mopping the floors while my coworker's closing out her till, and here they come. Our cast. Me is OP, my coworker's Jake, and these two valued customers, Customer 1 and Customer 2. As I'm putting my mop away, Jake tells me I should come watch this on the security camera. There's two guys running at the store full sprint, trying to make it before we lock up in 5 minutes. My rule is simple. If you get in before I lock the doors, I'll serve you, but if you take longer than 10 minutes after close, I'll ask you to leave with no purchase because it's after 1 a.m. and I want to go get some sleep. So Customer 1 comes barreling into the store, and instead of walking in like a normal person, he decides to try and jump the turnstile at the entrance to stop shoplifters from trying to run out the front door. And lo and behold, as he runs past the wet floor sign directly in front of the turnstile, he slips and only makes it halfway and collides directly with the arm of the turnstile tip to tip. His buddy helps pick him up, laughing at him, and they start browsing. Jake goes outside and locks the doors and finishes up closing until my till is the only thing left to do. Lo and behold, their 10 minutes are up, and they haven't made a single choice yet. I pipe up, "Hey you guys, the store closed 10 minutes ago. I need you to pick what you want now or leave." Well, Customer 1 takes offense to me telling him that he has to leave the closed store and replies, "You know, I got hurt on your property, so I can take however long I'd like. And you should be giving me everything I want for at least half off, if not free, unless you want me to sue you." Him and Customer 2 start laughing and walking around and joking about what they should help themselves to. Jake looks at them like they're idiots and tells them they can get the hell out of the store right now or she'll call police and have them removed. Well, once again, Customer 1 and Customer 2 don't like being told what to do and walk up to the counter snickering and ask how we'd like going to court. I look at them, tired, and tell them that right now they have two choices. One, they buy something and leave now, or we call the police. Jake already has the phone all ready to go, and that we don't care if they sue us, because we don't own the store, and his injury was self-inflicted. He ignored the wet floor sign and tried to jump the turnstile when he could just walk through. Customer 1, "Well, can I at least get a discount?" Customer 2, at this point, realizes that we're pissed as he grabs the closest 12-pack and says, "Okay, well, get this and leave." So here we are, 30 minutes after closing, and finally get to go home. Those two never did bother to come back or sue us, but I still made sure my manager got all the footage ready just in case. Threatening to sue should be an instant lifetime ban. After all, they may come back and have another accident. And our second story. War story. USAF Senior Master Sergeant E8 versus Housing Office. When I arrived at Homestead Air Force Base in early 1987, I was assigned a base house on Florida Avenue. Back then, the USAF had its primary conference center at Homestead, and Florida Avenue was the primary route through base housing to the conference center. There were many different high-level functions at the conference center throughout the year, and residents of base housing along Florida Avenue were expected to keep their quarters and yard to a slightly higher standard than other areas of base housing. Whenever an important conference or function was scheduled for the conference center, the housing office would post a note to each and every Florida Avenue house a few days before the VIP arrivals, advising us to get our crap together, tidy up our yards, get the kids' bikes and trikes out of sight, move the kiddie pools from the front yard to the backyard, cut the grass, edge the sidewalks, etc., etc. Once the notices were posted, base housing would inspect, usually on a Monday, and notify anyone if they thought something might have been missed and needed a bit of additional attention. As a conscientious NCO, I was pretty good at complying with the requirements, but one time, a very VIP conference was coming, and I took great pains to make sure my quarters were second to none. I mowed, I trimmed, I even checked out an edger from civil engineering and edged the holy crap out of my driveway, walkway, and sidewalk. My quarters were absolutely magnificent after I spent half a friggin' Saturday and a big chunk of Sunday getting her prepared. So I get home from running the F-16 avionics branch on Monday afternoon around 5:30, and there's a note on my front door. It was the housing office re-inspection notice. In the remarks area, it just said, in red Sharpie and in all caps, "Trim your plants and shrubs. Re-inspection tomorrow." Holy crap, I was pissed off. Not a single word about how the rest of the place looked. Not, "Good job, but your shrubs could use a little trim." Nothing. "Trim your plants and shrubs. Re-inspection tomorrow." In bright red Sharpie. Trim my plants and shrubs? I'll trim my effing plants and shrubs. I backed my pickup up to my main shrubbery area and proceeded to yank every frickin' plant from my entryway area. They all came out. They completely filled up the bed of my 1987 Ford Ranger, and off to the base dump they went. I returned to my quarters and started working on the shrubs along the front and side of the house. I was able to use a strap in my truck to completely yank out 6 or 8 plants that had probably been there for 15 to 20 years out of the ground. There were 2 or 3 that wouldn't move, so I drove to a friend's house off base and borrowed his electric chainsaw to cut those 2 right down at ground level. After probably 3 or 4 trips to the base dump, a couple more hours sweeping and bagging debris, blowing off my driveway, walkway, and sidewalk, and putting a bit of mulch on the 5x5 area by the front door where I trimmed my flowering plants, all in all, the place was very presentable with its beautifully manicured lawn. It was just missing each and every plant, shrub, and anything else that scores of residents who lived there before me had taken the time and effort to install. But hey, my plants and shrubs were trimmed. The crap hit the fan the next morning when the base housing office contacted my CRS commander. Hell, my base quarters looked like it had been helicoptered in and dropped into an empty lot during the night before. But otherwise, it was very presentable in every way. The commander was amused and I stuck to my guns. There was nothing in the base housing rules that said I had to plant anything at my base quarters, nor was I required to retain and maintain anything that previous residents had planted. Turned out to be much ado about nothing, but I certainly made base housing's crap list for 2 or 3 years afterwards. I retired a few years later and moved off base. I ran the Wing's F-16 flight simulator for another 3 years after that and would occasionally drive down Florida Avenue just to see if any subsequent residents planted anything around that house. No one had. And our final story. My parents threw fake money at me when I exposed their blatant theft to the rest of the family. This happened in 2015. I was 18 and about to move out on my own. Prior to this, I had a savings account my parents had helped me set up, and I'd been putting money into it any way I could for 3 years. Birthday money, odd jobs, part-time after-school job washing dishes, all that stuff. And I'd managed to get a few thousand into it. I'd really been wanting to move out because I had 2 little brothers that absolutely drive me up the wall. My parents loved making me the live-in babysitter whenever I wasn't working, which is why I used the excuse to work as much as I could. When the time came that I wanted to move out, my parents said they wanted me to stay because they needed my help and were wanting me to start paying rent to help with the bills. But I held my ground that I wanted to live on my own. I'd already paid the deposit and first month's rent on an apartment without telling them, and by that point I had a local full-time job, so I was set to move out after about another month. So when they found that out, they freaked and told me to get out that day if I wanted to be on my own so bad. I packed what I could and left to go to my aunt and uncle's house. It was a 4-mile ride with a bicycle that had a small trailer hook to it. When I told my aunt and uncle what happened, they were very angry and took me in right away. A couple of days later, I went to withdraw all the money from my account and saw that it was empty. My parents had come in the day prior and cleaned it out. All the bank could do was give me a balance statement saying so. Because my parents were co-signers on the account, that meant they had access to the money too. I was livid and immediately told my aunt and uncle as soon as I could, and they were beyond angry too. Then my aunt got an idea and started calling up other people in the family to tell them what my parents had done. It wasn't long before the crap had hit the fan. My other aunts and uncles, cousins, and grandparents were all furious and let my parents have it. I don't know what kind of excuses my parents gave them, but it didn't work. The next time I saw my parents, they showed up to my aunt and uncle's house to yell at me. When they saw me, my mother threw some money at me and called me an ungrateful brat for telling everyone. My aunt then said it was her who told everyone, not me. I looked at the money they'd thrown, and it was just some kid play money my little brothers had. I asked where the real money was, and my parents said they'd already used it to pay off a credit card. I said I wanted the money they stole back for real, but they refused and said it was their right to take it since they'd opened the account for me and I still have a job. My expenses at the moment were fine because my next paycheck was deposited in a new account and I was able to save until the apartment was ready. My parents took a lot of heat from my aunt and uncle until they left. My cousin also used to babysit for my parents when I was busy, and she not only refused to do so again after what they did, but told me she put out the word to other teen babysitters on social media to avoid my parents because they were thieves. By the time I was living in my apartment, my parents finally couldn't take the social stigma anymore and met me to compromise. They said they couldn't pay me back all at once and asked for a payment plan. I had the exact number of the amount they'd stolen and said I wanted it all back. They actually tried to haggle me down to half the total, but I refused to say anything but the full amount. They reluctantly agreed and gave me $200 a month in cash for 2 years before it was all paid back. Now I barely ever see my parents, let alone speak to them, and they clearly still blame me for what happened too, because their reputations in the family never recovered. But I don't care. They were thieves that paid the piper. You have an awesome aunt and uncle there, true heroes of this story. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.